President Biden has made returning to the 2015 Iranian nuclear agreement one of his top foreign policy priorities. But his last week's election of a hardliner as the new president of that country putting that goal in jeopardy. Ebrahim Raisi wasted no time telling us United States what he won't do, including negotiate over ballistic missiles and rein in Tehran support from Hamas, Hezbollah, and other terror proxies in the Middle East. So his administration's hopes for a, quote, longer and stronger nuclear deal all but dead. Behnam Taleblu is a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, and he joins us now. Behnam, this was a really in the middle of what was going on in Europe. I know European negotiations seem to have bogged down almost immediately after the election outcome with this, and it feels like this has set us back tremendously, has it?
Well, great to be with you again, Charles. No, I don't think it has. In fact, I think the Iranians want this to be seen as a setback. The Iranians want to dangle the inauguration of this ultra-hardliner that you mentioned, Iran's new president-elect, or shall I say president-select, Ebrahim Raisi, as a way to kind of get Washington and the West to give more concessions earlier until we get to August. So it's best that we don't fall for this trap, and it's best the U.S. and the West realize how much leverage they actually have. And it's all about the numbers here. It's all about the economic needs of Iran.
It felt like the Obama administration had a lot of leverage, and they squandered it perhaps in this sort of urgent need to get a deal done. And it feels like this is happening all over again with the Biden administration. I hear what you're saying, but do you think they can resist the urge to just be able to check that box?
Let's hope not, because if what happened in 2013 and 2015 with the interim and final nuclear deals known as the JPOA and JCPOA respectively, if that situation happens again where the Iranians realized that the West needs a deal for political reasons more than they need a deal for economic reasons, they're going to take us to the cleaners again. And now I think the conversation in Washington about longer and stronger, I think that's a total fib. That's a total lie. I think that's just a domestic political cover that the administration is using to actually claw back that fatally flawed deal, the JCPOA.
What is it about the West and sort of ignoring the obvious role that Iran plays in the region, the dangers that it presents to its neighbors, to democracy, to freedom, that they don't take a harder stance, particularly while they can, because it feels like once they do have the nuclear capabilities that they're seeking, there won't be any turning back.
You know, you're absolutely right. And when you also relieve sanctions and you relax sanctions and you make it easier for Iran to immunize its economy against future sanctions, you also put yourself in a tough place 5-10 years down the line when the deal you sign, which is not permanent, actually expires, and then you have to deal with a more radical, a richer, a tougher, and potentially even nuclear Iran down the line. So there's a lot of issues in the way I feel like we're dealing with this strategic threat posed by the Islamic Republic. But one major flaw is mirror imaging. Another major flaw is denuding the Iranians themselves of agency. I think for the past few years here in Washington, we tend to think that the Iranians are merely responding to what we put out there, and if we behave, then they'll behave. That's not at all the case. These guys are hardened revolutionaries. They know what they want. They want to eject America from the region, and they're trying to pursue the safest path possible for a nuclear weapon to dominate the Middle East.
With that in mind, I've read where you've said this new president is just mostly the ultimate proxy for the supreme leader. There wasn't a big turnout for this election. There weren't, the candidates obviously were handpicked. The Iranian people don't seem interested anymore. From time to time over the last several years, I've gotten notifications from people who live there and others that there were efforts to spark some sort of internal revolt. Is any of that stuff possible? And if so, what kind of role would the West, particularly the United States, have to play?
Well, it's possible, but the biggest thing the West could do is take its cues from the street, take its cues from the people who are actually living there. In February 2020, Iran had the lowest ever recorded turnout for Iran's parliamentary elections. In June 2021, just this month, Iran had the lowest ever turnout for its presidential elections. The Iranian people are signaling something. They're trying to signal that they're tired of settling for less and that their protest vote is not going to be through the ballot box. It's going to be through the street. They're rejecting the system wholesale. And as the Biden administration is negotiating overtime in Vienna to claw back a fatally flawed and fast expiring accord, they would be wise to pay attention to this dynamic on the street.
A tremendous amount of damage has been done in the Middle East. You look at Yemen, for instance. What's the role of Saudi Arabia, these alliances that we were starting to see under President Trump? with some unlikely, unlikely alliances that may have been unheard of or unthinkable not long ago, they were beginning to come through. It would seem like there has to be a regional pushback as well. Is that possible?
There needs to be a regional pushback for sure. I know you're mentioning right now the Trump administration's overtime diplomacy to bring the Arabs and Israelis together, not to focus on the Palestinian issue, but to focus on the rising threat posed by the Islamic Republic of Iran, which threatens both their interests and security, as well as American interests and security. And while I do support a greater, closer collaboration between the Arabs and Israelis, ultimately Washington should be supporting both sides of that equation as well, to make sure that there is a backstop behind our local partners.
Behnam, it's been too long. Thank you very much. Always appreciate your expertise on this.